Good morning. Thank you everyone for coming to the Washington Street Work Group meeting. Bear with me while I figure out what my role is today, but I'm going to begin with making sure that we have quorum. So.
You do, right?
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah. So we got
2, 3, 4.
And we're total of.
what, 5, John?
Yeah, and John is missing. John will be here.
Really good.
Yeah,
So you're
There's
good.
3 is a quorum.
Yep,
so-
3 is a quorum. Okay.
Correct, and with Matt leaves at 15 minutes after, then we're still quorum.
Okay, so we will be good to go today, and so I'm going to officially open the meeting. And I believe first we are going to take public comment. Oh, first I'm going to accept the
So
agenda.
Welcome to the
Welcome
job.
to the job. Like I said, figure out the job today.
All good.
You'll pick it up fast.
I think so. We'll see. So let's accept the agenda. Would everyone like to accept the agenda? Can we vote, please?
Yes, second.
No need for roll call.
No need for roll call. Okay, thank you, Betsy. All right, moving on. Should we, is there any public comment? No public comment? Okay, thank you very much. We are going to go to item number 2, which is the Francis Street Beach Improvement Project. And I believe Laura Moret is hosting this from Scape along with Joe Fagley and maybe a few other people, Jenna. And starting off with community feedback, discussion, and synthesis.
Yes.
Laura.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again. I'm gonna just share my screen, and just FYI, Cole and John, I pulled your slides in just after we talk about the team. So we have all the material here. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so today we're gonna really kick off our pre-design phase for the Francis Street Beach Improvement project. We're going to do a little recap on the community engagement synthesis of what we heard at the open houses a couple weeks ago. And then we're going to really dig into kicking off this next phase of Francis Street Beach, meet the team, talk about the scope, talk a little bit about what we called the heart and the heartburn, what everybody's excited about and concerned about as we get started. And then just really start to talk about the schedule and how we hone in on a date for upcoming community engagement. Okay, so first, we're just going to talk about the community events. Last time we were together, we recapped the key takeaways from the abutters meeting that happened at the end of July. So I'm not going to spend time revisiting that, but happy to, circle back to that if anybody would like to. Mostly today, we're going to recap what we heard at the Downtown Resilience open houses. The 2 that happened on August 7th, we had, as I think many of the folks on the town and land bank side were there, one in the morning and one in the evening at the Whaling Museum. And we had good attendance. We had, between the meetings, we had about 110 community members come through. So lots of great conversations. So as you remember, I know you all vetted the materials before they went out, so you've seen this, but we had a series of interactive stations and boards. As you remember, this was brought together with the work that's being done by the Arcadis team on the Easy Street adaptations. And so we had the big room. I think you can kind of actually see it if I go back. For anybody who wasn't there, we had the big room in the Whaling Museum with the Francis Street Beach materials on this side, and then the Easy Street on this side. So really framing the efforts in the context of the CRP and the ongoing movement towards implementation on some of these efforts. So on the Francis Street Beach side, we had some background on the project, some information about the flooding that's being experienced today and what's anticipated with projections in the future. And then really honing in on the site at hand and understanding the way that people are using the site today or not, and then what they'd like to see here in the future, and having a discussion that will contribute to the basis of design for this project. So this was one of the activities where people indicated how they were using the site today with colored pins. So interesting to see. The most use feedback that we got was that kayaking was a big attraction at the site. Also, people are biking, walking, and driving, using the beach. A couple people parking. A couple people were there who were users of the Saltmarsh Center. We didn't have anybody feedback that they were using public transit or the wave shuttles in this area who responded. And then we asked these two series of questions, how are you using this site today? And then how do you want to use it in the future? You can see the sticky notes from the morning and the afternoon here. I'm sure I actually want to take a moment because I think a lot of us had more nuanced conversations that didn't necessarily make it to the stickies. But just synthesizing some of these takeaways. We heard a strong desire for expanding the public space and improving public access. I would say generally a lot of support, particularly on the Francis Street Beach side of the road, and especially around the ADA accessibility, the pathway down to the beach. I know I had a conversation particularly in relation to the Saltmarsh Center and how that could have better access that's accessible. We heard some interest in maintaining sightlines. So even as we add more vegetation and an elevated berm feature, how do we think about the importance of the views to the waterfront, both from abutters and from users of the site? We heard a lot of support for ecological design, birders, and beach grass plantings being here in the future. And slightly different from what we heard at the abutters meeting, there was actually a lot of interest and support for rain gardens and stormwater infrastructure. And I think particularly I think in the same way that we heard with the discussion with the abutters, that people are experiencing flooding more through the stormwater infrastructure than overland coastal flooding at this time. We heard quite a bit of that. There were some, negative or concerned comments around the large trucks and how they impact the experience on the site and the experiences of flooding that are happening today. And then sort of a mixed feedback on parking. Some people saying they need more parking to use it, and others saying that parking should be moved elsewhere and the site should be used more for recreational use. And then this was just, I think, squint test, you can kind of get a sense. This was the kind of visual preference. What would you like to see here? You can see the green dots are the positive, yellow or neutral, and red is negative. So on the access, all green dots, lots of support for the idea of overlooks, decks, ADA connections, multi-use path. Also generally a lot of support for the ecological features, whether it's the reinforced dunes, the rain gardens, or native plantings. A little bit more mixed on the recreation side, I would say, with kayaking being still pretty supported, and then sort of mixed feelings on sunbathing or picnic areas. I think I basically just summarized what this says. So I'm going to pause because I know a lot of us were there having conversations. Members of the working group were talking to community members. So anything to add, anything that's not well represented here that you'd want to talk about?
I was on this poster board and explaining it to people so that people could put up these dots. And some of the people that had issues with picnicking were saying things to the effect that it's on a busy intersection, and if they have to park a car for a few seconds to let a family member out, or so that it can be dropped off at the right location. That was the issue, where people might not like picnicking because they'll have to be dropped off.
There's places they can do that. They'll figure it
I see.
out. I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Somebody else mentioned later.
Right.
So one thing that's interesting to me about this is that everyone's really positive on access, but nobody's really, that we don't have complete positive responses on use. So you can get there from here,
Right.
right?
But we don't want you doing these things.
We don't actually, we haven't done
Through. Everybody buy it.
And not to say anything negative, but neighbors also had issues with the use of this. Neighbors that put up under the recreation type things.
Yeah, we don't want people hanging around.
right.
Have to walk out too
Well,
much.
But a lot of them in the abutters meeting talked about that they have have always historically just, they're okay with people wandering by. on the beach side.
Yeah, don't put
But
down a
not some
chair
stop.
or bring
Pretty
it
well,
up.
she was.
Well, and realistically, people are not responsible, often not responsible for their trash. So when
But
you
this-
think about bringing a sandwich and unwrapping it and the butter ends up with the paper in their yard, you know?
Actually, that was one thing that maybe isn't fully captured here, at least an anecdotal conversation I had with what some of the neighbors who were saying they love the beach, they would like to use it more, but there's a lot of debris, there's sometimes some trash, there's some pipes sticking up. So I think just a general support for improvements in the form of cleaning up the beach and making it more enjoyable to spend time on the sand there.
In a lot of this stuff,
I'll take
it's,
everything.
in a lot of these access issues in my mind, there is a aspect of how much and what's happening. The bluff off was great, no problem when it was the people from downtown, and it was okay when it was a few other people. But all of a sudden, when it starts being, now it's eroding, and it starts being buses stopping, dropping people off, or people running, yoga classes on the bluff, et cetera, then you've crossed the line, and when it's a constant stream of people and there's yoga classes, you cross the line. So I do think there is a in between that's acceptable that we, so.
I would completely agree. I hear the same thing about Lily Pond, so that everyone's concerned if we improve Lily Pond, right, or restore the site, that it's gonna become incredibly popular and that more and more people are gonna be there. And I do remember talking to abutters about exactly what you just said, which is that too many people is too many.
Coffin Park was the same thing, but since it doesn't have parking, the neighbors sued the town, it doesn't have parking. And it hasn't turned into an early childhood development center, they don't run classes there, they don't have things there, it's completely fine, there's no issues.
Right.
But if you added things and added bringing people up, like when people have weddings and things at the oldest house, et cetera, then there are issues. So there is an in between.
So people like open space in their backyard, they just want public space in their backyard.
Well, they don't mind people coming, but there's a point where it
Yes.
becomes more than that.
You gotta just. So,
Yeah.
here's my, the other day there was a salt marsh event. Next squares, I think it's the way there's real hard grass. Just before. Italy or whatever that house is called, whatever the one. Good, right.
Yep.
So. No trash there, I know respectable older people aren't gonna leave trash, I get that. But my point is, let's just say we were cleaning up. Just because we're cleaning up, not because we have consultants, not because we have this big plan. I think we'll clean up the beach and get rid of all this stuff from 75 to 100 years ago. Make it a decent walkable beach. People just started migrating and doing their thing naturally without any plan, right? Nobody would be talking about it. It would be positive because it would just be happening by itself. It wouldn't be intrusive. It would just be natural. That's how this is gonna end up. This is gonna end up being walking people that are in town. That don't have cars. You don't need to worry about parking here. That's the last thing we should be concerned with. But people will find a way to get this stuff out on Meter Street along the side of is this former property and in the town parking lot. Or somewhere down by Sales's or something they're gonna do. How do you think the kayak works? There's not one parking space. It just works by itself somehow. So I'm not worried about all that stuff. I think that those green dots explain what we've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 meetings. That look, that feel of sort of like Children's Beach, I keep saying that, but it's a different version. Where people just enjoy themselves naturally, like your thing at the
Creeks.
at the Easy Street, no, I'm thinking of the College Gallery building, old place. That is, people are just sort of doing whatever they're doing with their food, with their just taking pictures, whatever it is. And it just happens and it moves on to the next people that are coming. And that's what will happen here. It's spreading out people in town is what this does. It's not all going to one place. So I take a grain of salt with certain negativity. I've been dealing with this for 20 years of negativity.
There were way more green
Don't worry about
dots.
Yeah.
No,
There were, yeah. And
absolutely.
The truck comment, I would delete that, Laura. Like, okay. So
I
where
mean,
are they
trucks are gonna be there I think, people
Wow.
comment, but that's we know that's the truck route, right?
Both sponsored Low Beach once, and that was.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think when you look at the mix of responses, I think it kind of captures, well, I mean, there are some exceptions. It kind of captures the spirit of, this maybe is a little bit more of a place of respite, a little bit of a passive recreation enjoyment, right? I think that comes up. There's a couple things that are more active, like a food shack came up and there
And
might
the
have been a
other
couple.
issue-
Oh, somebody said a playground somewhere, but go ahead. And, it's just one voice. Yeah.
Couldn't do that. Just to add one more thing. I
Sure.
did, before, so if the beach is the towns, right? Oh,
Yeah, and it's
I mean,
more
is it,
land.
okay, I know that sounds ridiculous for me to ask that question, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like.
I know, but we've got along the law stuff, I'm just curious as to how that, okay.
roughly
So-
70%.
What if just like out of the blue, you could make a case, just forget this project again for a minute. That we have a liability issue with people using that because of all the construction stuff. There's a lot of weird stuff on the ground along there, like things that you could step on and get hurt, and kids. So that's another point to make, cleaning this up, is make it better and safe for people to recreate. We had a kid get hurt recently, it was last summer, I think it was, though. Fell on one of those spike things, the bolts that stick out of, you know how when they put together the pilings and they have those galvanized bolts and they don't cut the end off, right? That's dangerous, like it technically is somebody.
And that did come up. Yeah.
You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's a good point, Laura, to sell this.
Absolutely. Yep.
You know what I mean?
So
Well, that
for-
speaks to we've had so many conversations about the name of the project, and it just ties back into Francis Street Beach Improvement Project, that's what
Yeah.
all of this
It's-
is, and I think that's.
It's already gonna happen now, just with that last move. I mean, you can see, I've seen more beach towels on Francis Street this year than I've had.
I have two, actually.
It's amazing, like, there's never been a towel on that beach. And all of a sudden, there's a few beach chairs, people hanging out, like, that's good.
So what we want into this is when we're doing the construction phase, with a lot of the historic stuff, and then once it's, operational.
Start trash.
Right, exactly, fine. And then once it's up and running, we need to work out the maintenance for it, because we can get the DPW to do some amount of maintenance, might be able to get the landline to do some amount of maintenance, and then we can work it out.
The whole York issue, that's a whole nother conversation with Jay's and Cliffside too, so yes.
But these people, we look after a lot of those sites through parks and recreation, other sites are looked after
Yeah.
through just a normal part of DPW.
And you'll see when we get to the scope of work for the next part of the project that one of those is the operations and maintenance discussions and plans. So I think that's going to be an important component. And frankly, I don't know, how this works, but even as we are in design for this project and looking for, grant funding, that, all of that in the future, what are the things that we're hearing, like the cleanup that could maybe be done in a very low and, low key way in the near term, to start changing people's experience. Something to think about.
Yes.
Planting beach grass on the town site.
We actually heard it as like what we spoke to one abutter, actually the person who's in the property just across from Francis Street Beach. She was saying that since the beach grass had been planted, that had really reduced the overland flooding that she'd seen, but there's kind of one space where there's a cut through that doesn't have beach grass where she sees the water coming. So anyway, I think even those small improvements have been perceived as effective and positive. Yeah. Okay. Any other? I don't think there's anything terribly shocking here. I think it is helpful to understand people's perspectives on recreation, and certainly this will influence the alternatives that we develop. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next steps? No.
Nope.
Okay, so now we'll take a step back. We're moving from this phase that really Scape and Woods Hole Group has been involved in, and we're launching into pre-design and getting the full team engaged. So maybe we can take a step back and introduce the new team members who are on the call. So just to be clear here, so the town of Nantucket and in partnership with the Land Bank and Remain have two sets of consultants. So the SCAPE team, our team with myself and Jenna, I think everybody knows us, uh, are the prime, where SCAPE is the prime, and then we have a number of sub-consultants. And maybe we can just go around and introduce the folks who are on the call who maybe new. So Hazen, I think we have Daniel and Julia today. Do you all want to just introduce yourself and maybe just say a little something about Hazen's role on the project?
Sure. I'm Dan Kramer. I'm a project manager with Hazen. Ben Agarwal listed here as the project manager for this. Ben's just out today. So I'm filling in with Julia here. We've been working with the town, with the sewer department for a long time, doing, condition assessment, rehab and replacement of sewer, upgrades of pump stations. And recently, in the last couple of years, we started working on the stormwater system. So we're going to be assisting with stormwater design, hydraulics, those kind of things. And Julia is going to be helping us out with that too.
Great. Thank you. And I think most people know Joe, but you want to just introduce Woods Hole Group and the role on this?
Thanks, Laura. Just if I cut out, let me know. I've been having audio trouble recently.
It's better than yesterday, Joe.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Joe Famely, Climate and Sustainability Team Lead at Woods Hole Group. We'll have Kirk Bosma, our lead coastal modeler, plugging in from time to time. Our primary role is to continue our support for SCAPE and Land Bank on the coastal resilience side and sort of review needs for further modeling as we get into design and benefit cost assessment.
Great. And then we also on our team have IEC. Jim Newman is leading the team. We don't have them here today. They have a very small scope that happens more at the end of the project, so you'll get to meet them there, but they're really focusing, they're experts on developing benefit cost analysis that can be a tool for helping us gather future funding. So they'll get involved later in the project. And then also contracted directly with the town are Ty and Bond. So John and Cole, maybe you want to say a few words. I can flip your slides. Sorry, I just combined everything. But if you want to do a little introduction of your role.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, I'm Cole Bateman. I'm a professional engineer with Ty and Bond. I'm also the project manager for the specific tasks that were included in here. And also joining me today is John Bologna, who is a vice president of Ty and Bond, who will be our project director for the project. Just aside, we were both formerly part of Coastal Engineering, who has done plenty of work with the Land Bank for the Easy Street Park project. Also, the Cambridge Street project and some other work as well. Specifically for this project, we will be assisting the team with some regulatory review as well as some waterfront design for the elevated pathway and the reinforcement underneath the dune. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if you want to say anything to these.
Yeah, no, Cole pretty much covered it all. So good morning, everyone. Good to meet everybody and looking forward to this project. It's been a while and we're happy finally to get to the point where we're going to see some work getting done.
Yeah, great.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay, great. And we can, this is just some of the bullets that you provided on the specific scope of work. So as we walk through the project, just chime in and we can talk about what's happening at each phase across our teams. And I'll just say that on some of our previous work, we've worked really closely with Cole and John and just find it to be super complementary, collaborative experience. So we're thrilled about all of the team members coming back together. Okay, so just to give us a sense of where we are in the project. So we started community engagement this summer, as you all know. We had those two focus groups, or the abutters focus group in July, and then the two public workshops, really sharing the work that has been done to date, the analysis, and then starting to set up the basis of design and letting the community know what's happening and helping them understand how they can be involved moving ahead. So we're here now at the end of August. We have a 10-week pre-design phase. We're going to walk through each of these in a little bit more detail. We have then 16 weeks of schematic design, which sometimes is called 30% design. So get us to a technical document set that will help move ahead to the next phases. Then we have that cost analysis, the BCA, benefit cost analysis, and then that operations and maintenance plan that we talked about. So we're going to walk through these step by step. So pre-design on the Scape team end will really be spearheaded by Hazen and Sawyer and Woods Hole Group, and then in partnership with Cole and John's team on some of the site investigations. So this is going to include test pits to understand the percolation of the soil. All those questions about groundwater and what's possible with stormwater management here will be supported by these investigations. Also, borings to help inform the structural engineering of the flood features, the flood structure that's beneath the dunes. We'll be having a series of pre-permitting meetings with agencies who will need to weigh in on the project. And I know the last time we spoke, I think Brooke, you had said that you'd been in conversation with some of those groups at the state level. So maybe we can brainstorm a little bit about outreach. We'll also be developing a basis of design document that's essentially all of the things that we're trying to achieve, particularly on the technical side through this project. So what are we trying to manage in terms of stormwater? What are our elevations that we're trying to reach, in terms of the flood risk reduction? And so all of those components will be in a memo that will inform and be sort of a check for the design that happens to follow. We'll also be going back, a couple of years ago, we had done a preliminary order of magnitude cost estimate. We know a lot has changed, both in terms of the thinking about the infrastructure improvements needed and just, the realities of costs and everything. So we will be looking at the design and updating that with Hazen in order to have a better sense going into this process of what our budget is looking like. Joe, Cole, John, anything or anything I'm missing here, Dan, in terms of that first phase?
I don't believe so.
Okay, great. And then we're launching into schematic design. These are just examples from other projects we worked on with the land bank, but really it'll be a combination of beginning that process with conceptual alternatives. So I think these will start to speak to some of the variability that's possible on the site, both in terms of spatial form. What does this thing look like? How do we make sure that it's Nantucket and it's contextual? How much space do we want to create on boardwalks and things like that? And then also alternatives around use and things like that will be teased out through these alternatives. We'll be then moving to a preferred direction, developing a 30% design document set that will be something like what you're seeing here with layout and grading and initial thoughts about planting and engineering components. We'll also be developing some illustrative graphics that start to help engage the community in understanding what the possibility is for the future here, as well as you all. And then we'll be creating a much more refined cost estimate based on the more detailed drawings that we create in this phase. Again, Cole and John, anything to add on your deliverables in the schematic design phase that I've missed?
Nope, thanks, Laura.
Okay. And then we have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can I just interrupt for just a second before those
Please.
people here that haven't been, I don't remember them talking before, so I just want to bring this up.
Of course.
Seeing that Pudding House, moving it, to talking to the people about helping them move their house, the one that's kind of causing the problem the most as far as the layout of Washington Street.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't want that to get forgotten in this whole conversation with these other people that are on right now.
So I'm channeling my inner Vince and saying that's beyond the boundary of this project.
Oh, okay. I
Yep.
thought it was like somebody had already talked to them. I don't know. Whatever.
I mean, I think there's two things happening at once,
Yeah,
right?
like,
There's the
I mean, it should all be kind of tied into this process, not just ask them to move the house for fun.
no, of course.
I forgot the exact details with that because it got brought up at the last meeting. I thought it was an awesome plan if they're willing to.
So let me go back to the site boundary for maybe where can we see it? It might just be on here. So just to give a sense, this is the site boundary of this pilot project or initial project that we're working on. Here's Puddin.
Oh, so we're talking just about Francis Street right now. Forget it. I got you now, Laura. Sorry.
However, I think
Just
there's yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Like
Go
5 feet. Sorry.
Cole, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, just for clarification, there already has been a house removed from the project site, right? That was done
That's
maybe a
right.
year ago.
That's right
Okay,
here. We're just
all right.
talking about, the gentleman who owns these two, the little cottages came to the meeting. We
Okay.
know that that's one of the greatest pinch points of the ability to get a path down Washington Street. So here's the important part, I think, about what you're saying though, Nat, is that, and I think this is why it's good that we have been thinking at the framework level and we're bringing that thinking to the site design. We don't want to do anything here that isn't compatible with a long-term multi-use path on the water side, right? And so as we're designing this first phase project, we want to be thinking about, even if it's in sort of conceptual sketch form, how could it tie in to the future plan? That's why you don't want to look at the site in isolation. At the same time, the design of that space isn't part of this scope of work. So
Thank you. That's-
And
that's
I
fine.
think, well, when it was brought up, we were talking about the feasibility study for all the town infrastructure.
Yeah.
And Washington Street and the extension, tying that together, stormwater.
Yeah, and it just, the only reason I said it sounded so positive, which is unusual. That I was like, that's the worst one, and they were willing to work with everyone, so I mean, I just didn't want that to get forgotten. So.
well, I think that I mean, it's interesting to think about, like, as we move this ahead and think about it as a test case, I think there's work that can continue to be done with the abutters and thinking about, I mean, I think we heard from all the waterside, almost all the waterside abutters at least, that there's a desire for the town and the land bank to elevate the waterside properties to provide access, well, maybe mixed to provide access, but at least to be able to tie into higher ground. And so I don't know what that, it's probably not in our realm, but like, what is the ongoing collaboration that needs to happen between the town and the land bank and the abutters to start to think about the long-term vision?
Yep. Agreed.
All right, so here, so the benefit cost analysis, this was something that I think Vince and Leah smartly recommended, get moved into this scope of work, which is to use, I mean, it's actually two steps. So it's to use, there's a FEMA benefit cost calculator that you can use to explain the benefits of a project like this to the community. We know that the greatest benefit would be if you were able to create an elevated feature all along this segment of Washington Street with tiebacks to the Washington Street extension and Commercial Wharf. It's not all going to happen at once. We believe there will be some, benefits to flood risk reduction just with closing this flood pathway, two flood pathways that we see at Francis Street Beach. So there's sort of a baseline, and then there's also a documentation of the additional benefits that the project will provide. The way that we can use that is as we think about potential grant opportunities in the future, whether it's FEMA BRIC, whether it's some of the great, state grant opportunities that could help with future funding of advancing this project. They're going to want to see that analysis. So that's why we brought that in here. And so, as I said, IEC, who's excellent at this, Woods Hole Group, and we work with them all the time. I imagine others do too. They'll come in and plug in for that piece with the support of the team. We also had an ad that I think was a really smart one, asked by Leah and Vince in the town for an operations and maintenance requirements and estimates. So as we think about the construction of this, improved project, what is the plan for operations and maintenance? How does that work between the town and the land bank? Just some of the things that haven't been worked through yet, and understanding the way the new features what maintenance will they require, and how is that going to happen, and what's it going to cost. So just to be informed again as we move ahead, knowing that there's a capital investment, but also an ongoing maintenance investment that would be a part of this. And then community engagement, you all know about. We have had one of our stakeholder focus groups. We intend to have another one in the fall, and I think we need to define together, are we going back to the abutters? Are there other groups that we want to engage? And then we'll also have another upcoming community meeting that will review project, the concept alternatives with community members. And we've already kind of had these stakeholder, engagement sessions. So I just want to, well, actually, before I move ahead, anything I missed, anything to add, any questions from the working group on the scope and what we're doing here? this is a little cheesy. We do this at my dinner table at night, like the peaks and pits, but I actually think as we're starting, I find these conversations really informative to know from all of your perspectives, you know, what are the greatest opportunities of the project and what are the greatest concerns. So just wanted to open it up. I don't know if y'all want to go around the room on your end, or however you want to do it. Maybe somebody in the room can sort of start the discussion. Would just love to hear what we should be thinking about in terms of opportunities and potential hurdles as we get started.
Slightly unrelated, I was talking to Julie Jones in the car park at my work this morning.
I come on.
I beg your pardon.
Guys, remember what country you're in. dude.
I know.
I know.
Appreciate
Those words.
I know, and thank you for the linguistic translations from my parents. So
We're just going.
but Dewey was very okay with everything, and he's coming around to it all. And I think we
Yeah.
heard that.
Love that.
It's just the wetland across the road, and that's his new thing. And he's coming up with ideas on that one too. So that's also a positive. He's willing to play a part in that.
And see, what did I say about this? Got to find a way to make it look like we have a plan, that people know what they're doing. It can't just be, you know, water's going on Union Street and all this stuff. It has to be reasonable. People to think that we're doing something that we should be doing.
Yep.
That's what I stressed at this whole thing from the start with Washington Street is it. There's not gonna be another Washington Street. So it has to be talked about positively about trucks, not negatively, because that's all part of Nantucket's system.
It's how it works, right?
How
It's
it-
the infrastructure.
Or else we're gonna might as well evacuate. So that's good news, Vince. I love that.
Yeah, that's great.
I haven't actually talked to him personally, but we've had a few thumbs up lately, so that's good. You know,
Okay.
Asking moments, so. Were you looking
that-
for comments, Laura? I don't think I said too much already, but.
No, I want everybody to go around and say, what is the greatest opportunity of this project and what's the pitfalls? What are the things we need to be aware of it?
I think we have to, I love that guy that talked earlier about the infrastructure. So I looked at you. You guys work together, you know what's going on. That's huge. Cause I never heard of this company, right? I know like was Samson and all that. As long as they've been here and know what's going on with Nantucket's 150-year-old problems, that's all I need to know. I don't care about anything else because that means that they already know what's going on before they even start.
They're aware of the sewer
Yeah.
and the stormwater.
Yeah.
right?
I guess one of the things that we could add to this, and I know again, it's not really outside of the scope. I don't think it is. But the positiveness of Brooke brought up, well, I may have brought it up, but she kind of cleaned it up for me, was talking about salt marsh. That land in the future is not being gone unnoticed. It's part of this. We just don't talk about it. Like whether there's gonna be a pump station there someday, maybe as part of it. We don't know that. But improvements that we have a great relationship with the yacht club now. Which you may not remember that, but it wasn't once a long time ago when it all started. And so if there's any input from these, these other entities, NAR, when I brought up Howard Place, that side of the project, getting more people on board that are big players is huge. It's huge, right? Because we may need them for something, or we likely will, So I just think that the coordinated effort and the collaboration is the key to every single bit of this. And showing nice pictures, Laura, is better than showing cars going underwater and all that, okay?
Of course, yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
We're not showing any cars going underwater. Well, I mean, we showed the flood events that have happened, but from here, we're building towards the vision for the future. So you said collaboration and coordination with adjacent big players or, key partners.
And then the other part, again, I'm gonna bring it up probably every other meeting, is the polls. I don't know if we should be talking to Tracy McDonald at all about this. Easements, getting the poles moved They only have to be moved a few feet. It's not like they gotta go somewhere else. They're never gonna go underground, so just forget that. They need to be moved. That sidewalk has to be an actual sidewalk. We don't want everybody all of a sudden going to this new multi-use path. And then that sidewalk becomes, well, what are we doing over here? And you know, oh, we have to decide, maybe that's what we want. I still feel both sides of the road have to function, personally. It's like, kind of like South Beach Street by the yacht club, works perfect, doesn't it? Because both sides work. Now, that wasn't the actual plan though, just so you know. So that's good that that was set up that way. And that's the way this needs to be. This needs to be both sides. You know, so that's it. Laura, thank you for everything you do. Being the-
Thank you. Thanks for the great comments. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. We've got all the parties engaged and involved across the town and communications. We're so far ahead of the curve on bringing the public into dialogue about this, that the angst gets spent, it gets spilled and it evolves, and that's generally when you try to initiate change in this town. Early and gradual, so people feel like it's not being put on them.
Yes.
I think that's so true.
Yeah.
You don't, if you give people an opportunity to comment and be heard early and bring them with you, then you don't get all of the concerns when you're trying to do the thing, right?
And I think that image with the houses gone is the perfect example, the heartburn example. People looked at something and saw their house is not there.
Yeah.
And they didn't have context for the purpose of that
Yeah.
study when they received it. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Understood.
They're just images.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's real, but yeah.
but if you put a person in a deficit of support, you have to get them out of the deficit before you can get them on board. So, you know, just minimizing unforced errors where we can, I think.
I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Now really continuing with that community engagement, I know there was a question about another abutters thing, I think that's critically important to
Okay.
continue communication, early engagement, and continued, conversation about how we move forward.
And we can do this stuff in the off season, just give them a link, so it's good.
So we collected a bunch of email addresses and we're trying to get more communication methods, phone numbers, and knock on people's doors and having better relationships, so that we can find the people once they leave and they're back in Florida and places, so we can keep contacting them through the year.
In the world.
Yeah. So they don't come back next spring and go.
We didn't know anything.
Well, this is what I learned on Baxter
We
Road.
haven't heard
I made a huge email database and I found a bunch of people's phone numbers. They ring me regularly now, but once you're that person that they can go to, or you can then say, hey, this is going to.
And get them on an email list.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's good. That's what we need to do.
It's how I got the whole north end of Baxter Road to try and write things.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's great. I mean, it's so much work on your ends, but I think it's really effective to let people know they're being heard. Yeah. Okay. Who else?
Are we on 5 right now?
No, we're still getting the
4.
feedback for Hart.
We're getting feedback on what do we need? Yeah, Heart and Heartburn.
Roses and Thorns.
Peaks and, well, I can't remember what Leah called it on the agenda, peaks and pits or something.
Peaks and pits.
Vince,
Oh,
what do you got?
I talk plenty. I'm just happy with how this is now progressing. I wish people would not take pictures so seriously when they're just ideas, and I greatly appreciate what Brooke is saying, but they're just pictures. And I'm happy that it did spark the conversation, which is the point of it. And I know that it's under the heartburn side of things, but it led to the heart side of things where we can now have the dialogue. I'm very happy with how they worked.
Understood. Okay.
Excellent.
Anybody else want to chime in? I don't want to force anybody, but anything else we should know from your perspectives? No. Okay. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit about schedule, and this relates particularly to getting on the calendar, before too long, that next community engagement. So just to give you a sense of how the calendar lays out. So Pre-design is 10 weeks. That's going to be not a lot to show in terms of drawings and designs. It's really going to be all the things we need to inform the design. So we're not going to have a lot to, we'll be engaging you along the way, of course, and giving you information about what we're finding, but it's not going to be like public facing yet. So really the sweet spot is when we get into schematic design, we have 16 weeks. We have that initial stage where we're going to be studying conceptual alternatives. And so we want to, I think, with your confirmation, have a couple of vetted alternatives that we develop with you that could have differences in program and spatial considerations. Maybe it has different ways that we're thinking about stormwater. I don't know yet. We're going to find that out in pre-design. And so I think if we're 4 to 6 weeks in, that would be a good time to be having a community conversation and getting feedback on those alternatives, similar to what Arcadis was doing on the Easy Street project, where they were in their alternatives phase. With the way the timeline lays out, that lands us in early December. I think a couple of questions are, how does that feel in terms of a time for outreach in the community? And also knowing that the Arcadis project is ongoing, that they're going to have another public engagement event. Does it line up? Do we want to do another joint event? It felt very successful in terms of getting people in the room who are concerned about downtown resilience and not burning them out with too many meetings. So just wanted to open that question and see if early December felt right and if there are any specific things we should be thinking about with scheduling.
Thomas, do you want to include your stormwater feasibility or try and tie that into that? Because you're gonna.
That's when the final report is due.
Exactly.
So that could be a launch.
So does it make sense to try and tie the three together in some way, or try
I mean,
to?
there is overlap between them,
Yeah.
so it makes
I'm happy
sense.
to, and we can keep discussing it and make sure that we can put it in context.
Right,
These two
that it
things
works.
make sense.
And that is a good perception.
Yep.
People working
Together.
together. I mean, I lose track how many times we have that. Imagine what other people think. If I forget who's who, are you kidding? Other people have no idea about this stuff. So that's good that you said this is good.
And
Excellent.
do we do a joint meeting of relative committees and boards and, so we can have like Concom.
Timing has to be good on that one. Huh?
Yeah.
That's a good
It's harder,
idea.
it's harder to corral,
Yeah.
for joint
Kind of
public
at
meetings,
the
but
trail up.
So one of the ways we've handled this before, the committee side of things,
Yeah.
is
That
that
actually works.
before a big public meeting like this, what we would do is we would shop this to say, Concom, HDC, various others, to get their feedback, so we go to the community meeting, already have gotten their feedback. So,
or invite them
And they
to
can
appoint
participate.
someone to send,
Yeah.
it could be done different ways, but, maybe relevant boards and committees, you just should be asking them to identify someone who will
the appointment.
be the point person, so that they can keep getting updated information. So again, when something comes to HDC eventually, it's not out of the blue, it's in an extensive context of
Here's an update.
of how much planning has gone into it and why and often sometimes like you get to the HDC for a decision and they have no idea what all of the criteria and parameters and stuff that went into the final design. That if they knew that all along, they would be more, less resistant to the final design, because it's sort of, oh, we already thought about that and we already thought about that and we ended up here. So.
Just another aside to this, and for continuity, we've already spoken to Niles Parker about potentially using the Whaling Museum again. And he thought it was such a fabulous use of space, and because it's a neighbouring property, they're in, so we get the use of the space again for free potentially. And it would make sense, because the first event was
We're
there.
gonna have to go to the trail up.
But
It's
then-
like this.
But then we just keep it, trying to keep it close to where the action is going to be for both projects, and stormwater being right in the town as well.
Excellent.
And we
It was a
just
great venue. I think it worked really well.
run water and including them in the process. And I'm wondering if we need to have a stormwater presentation to the select board. And there's a lot of moving parts with this thing, with like the state of the harbor, presentation that we gave. The stormwater regs, all this, this work.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll shoot Libby an email right now and say.
Yeah,
let's put
because
that
I
on
don't
the
think
summer
they're
sheet.
aware of all the moving parts.
Yeah.
Both on the regulation side of things and what we're doing here.
And maybe if we time it right, there could be an update on this project at the same board meeting. So again, we want to do more and more demonstrating to the community how much interagency, interdepartment collaboration is going on in
Definitely.
long-term planning, because the community's crying for long-term planning, but they're not seeing that it's actually happening all the time. So.
Has anyone been in touch about this project with the Climate Change Summit also happening at the yacht club? It could be a good opportunity to touch on it or provide material to the crowd that's there.
I have worked with the two organizers on different topics. I can bring this up to them.
If you
But
think
they
it's
could just
worthwhile.
talk about it as an announcement, but their sheet for the night and all their presenters are full. But if we could just have it as like an announcement at the start and end, that'd be great. But from Dr. Jane Carver and Dr. Sarah Boyce are the ones that are leading it. They put the whole thing together, and they've got 3 other speakers as well, who are going to talk mainly on harbour issues and other more related issues. But it would be great to bring up as part of the town's response, the town and the landmarks response to climate issues.
The way that CRAC came to the state of the harbor and asked for feedback at the very end. The end of the beginning, Leah and Vince, Leah and Peter, right, stood up and did a 5-minute.
I know it's off
Info
topic,
session.
but later that same night, that's on the Wednesday, the 3rd, whatever the Wednesday night is, there's no select board meeting that night. Later the same night, we're going to have the dredge plan presentation in community room. And this is why I was communicating with them so they could move my time to accommodate their time, so both will be too much overlap. But we can announce it at that event as well.
Great.
When does the next Arcadis report out or public event land? Is it, I know it's in the winter, but I don't remember if it December aligned.
That's a Leah question, and I would.
Okay. Yeah, we'll coordinate with Leah when she's back. No problem.
Yeah, I thought Leah said November, Laura, which
Okay.
feels like it might be a little early for us.
Okay, we'll follow up, and I think maybe an action item can be to begin to think about how we convene. I think it's a great idea, both in terms of just planning fatigue and getting people in one place for 3 projects that are very interconnected, demonstrates both our the collaboration that's happening and also just being respectful of people's time. So I think it's great if we can make it happen. Any other? That's our last slide. Any other thoughts, comments, things we should be aware of? Otherwise, we're going to be launching into these site investigations. I'm sorry, actually, one thing just triggered that Brooke was saying. When we think about, and we have in our pre-design phase, these initial conversations with the permitting agencies. Those include, in just the way the scope is written, Concom and HDC. So I guess a question I have is pre-design the right time? Do we go with the materials we have? Or should we be going after we've refined the designs? I mean, it could just be, hey, this project's happening. What should we be thinking about more generally? But is it valuable? Is it more valuable to go when there's a preferred direction? Just asking. We can noodle on it if we don't know.
Or when there's like say roundabouts or intersection changes or stuff that alternative 1, alternative 2, alternative 3, there's always like some, we all know what one we want, but we gotta say it this way, right? Kind of thing, or preferred or something like that.
Right.
We need to get that type of, I'm not gonna say there's a whole bunch of different alternatives, I'm not saying that about this, but.
Well, we do have an alternatives phase, but I think
I love the pictures, and this is what I'm trying to say, is coming up with multiple ways, just like with the green dots and those old pallets piled up there, that feels people still happy. So you see what I mean? Like, I think that that's how it needs to go, sort of a, you know, not pushy too much, but more of like, this is what we've been working on, kind of thing, and have an alternative 1, 2, 3, or whatever, something like that. I think that makes people feel like there's a lot of ethic gone in and that kind of stuff. It sort of makes it better than having one.
Right.
You know?
Understood, yeah. And we have alternatives as a part of this.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we can circle back on, you know, I think some of those permitting agencies conversations is just, you know, at the state level, whatever, at the federal level, just to let, hey, this project's happening, what, you know, get on the radar. But I
Yeah.
think maybe with the Nantucket-based groups, we want to work with you all to make sure the timing is right. So we don't have to solve it today, but let's think about it.
We also have, if you want to make the best use of your time, we also have people, you know, who aren't necessarily part of those committees, but work with them frequently enough that I feel like they can provide feedback. Like, we throw everything in front of Eleanor in our
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
The HDC is gonna pass that, or
Yeah.
I have some concerns, right?
Yeah.
And I can
The
look at
experience,
Concom
right.
stuff, and Liz can look at Concom stuff and say.
Yeah,
"That-
just the gut check, right? Yeah.
Sort of do a gut check in-house first and then set up permitting agency meetings.
I think that's smart.
If there was a reason for it.
Okay, makes sense. All right, so when Leah's back, we'll start to, you know, brainstorm on getting this aligned meeting scheduled if it can work with all the project calendars. Great. Anybody have anything else? That's all we got.
Number 3, next meeting is, well, first I want to say thank you, Laura. And that was
Yeah.
fantastic.
You
We
went
really
pretty
appreciate you.
Thanks to the team. So we have an awesome team. Really happy with this group. So
Yes, thank you to everyone. That was fantastic. Great summary, great way to kick this off. Our next meeting is scheduled for September 13th at 11 a.m. Are there any concerns about that date?
So you're gonna be available.
Should be back. She's gonna be up yesterday.
I assume she would.
So I do want to say, I think to the last few meetings, we've been really driving the agenda. This 10-week phase, we're going to be literally in the weeds. Like, I don't know that we're going to have something to report every 2 weeks. So we just put it forth. How do you want to think about your cadence while we're in this investigation phase? Do you want us to come back at the end of it and report?
How about, we don't, because there's nothing that's been decided, we don't need to continue to a date certain.
Yeah.
It isn't Concom. So what if we do a straw poll amongst Scape and other consultants and the 5 commission and board members represented, and see if it's needed at that point, and where you are, Laura, if you've anything to present. And then at that point, a week beforehand, we can decide to continue the 13th or not.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a staff thing.
Yeah,
Without
if there's
question.
something to share.
Leah says that,
keep it.
you
If
guys
not,
say it,
cancel
just- that's it.
Just
Whatever
send
you
me
guys say.
Okay.
That
Just
is
so
easy.
you know, it doesn't mean we're not working. It's just, you know, we're going to have to synthesize a lot of info before we have something meaningful to share. So
It's the hour to work.
So the whole point was we were doing 2 meetings a month through the summer to get to this
Yes.
phase, and we don't necessarily need to continue.
100%.
Yay. Give it
I
time.
like that.
I know, right?
free up some hours on everybody's calendars, right?
Lots of
And I
smiles.
think 4 kind of covered indirectly. All, throughout the whole meeting, I think we covered 4.
That's fine.
Yes, do we have any going on? So we have a plan for our next meeting. We will let you know a week ahead of time, and probably can skip that meeting and
Yeah.
probably going to end up to continuing to a later date. For 4, we have additional questions, concerns, or future agenda items. Does anyone have anything they want to bring up?
No, I just want to circle back, sorry, because I got distracted sending an email on it. If we have an idea of a timeline for select board meeting, it should get to me as soon as possible. So I can add, we can add it to the silver sheet, so.
Yeah, that's a good question. Laura, when do you think you might be able to present something to select board? When would be a good idea? End of September, early October? I'm just making it up.
let me go back to my calendar for a second. So, I mean, does the select board care about what we found in pre-design? I mean, we could do something that talked about the engagement process and what we heard so far and what we found in a basis of design. Otherwise, if the select board wants to see design, we're more in the winter.
Yeah, that's fine. And maybe, Charles, we don't wait to do stormwater at the same time.
That's
Okay.
what works, was still with you guys.
Yeah, let's have some meat to present.
Yeah,
That's my gut. Yeah, it's going to be kind of so what if we go in the fall. Yeah.
I into other things, make it look
Yes, but he may need to get
something done for.
in before they're ready.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
I think Charles might need multiple dates.
Yeah.
Okay,
Which is good, because the work's getting done.
It's
great.
No, it's good. It's just
to
to
report.
break
I love
into
it.
manageable chunks. You know?
That's true. Don't overwhelm with too much at once. Yeah.
so we're just gonna wait for an email from staff and.
Yep.
That's it. Okay, good. Mike, you got anything? I'll need you to share for 1 second, but I'm glad you're here. We asked about you. With Easy Street and this, just, you know, you have to be kind of like in the loop of what's going on here.
I think you raised a concern about, the long term is the access up and down the entire corridor, not necessarily the park.
Yeah.
I think that's been covered. The only thing I would ask about, I just maybe way too early, is just whether you would pursue federal grants for design and construction, like protect. It's always, each spring they open up for funding. I just didn't know if you were prepping
That's
for
it.
that.
That's exactly why I mentioned the FEMA funding, because once they
Okay.
do the modeling in that and all the costing projections of things that need to be done for that, for the FEMA part, it can then go for anything, including protect. And that
Okay.
protect grant is something I would chase with you.
Okay.
Where's that from?
That's from the bill, the bipartisan infrastructure law for
Okay.
resiliency projects.
one-
It's kind of project.
One of our deliverables that we didn't get into is a matrix that looks at all the different potential funding sources. We've done this with a number of other communities in Massachusetts. This project, how does it best align with the grant funding sources that are out there, be they, state or federal? And then making sure as we're getting towards the end that we have the deliverables, the text, whatever that's needed to be able to feed into those applications pretty seamlessly. So I think as we get further, we'll have a conversation about the requirements of the grants that are out there and what's the best fit for these projects.
And I'm meeting with the head of CZM, Allison, at 3 today on another matter. So is there anything we want to signal to her? I can
Where do we start?
just tell her,
Yeah.
tell her we're working on this.
We're going to be CZM do some of the best grants, and the Easy Street project is under a CZM grant.
Yes.
And we're going to be putting in other stuff.
Okay, I'll just tell
For
her.
the same thing, we really want to start pushing and talking and trying to get us raised up in their grant cycles. I know it's competitive, but if you could bring up that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Did you say you're working with Allison Brezius?
Yes, on the Vineyard Wind Blade turbine. I meet with
Right.
them every week,
So just so you know, Woods Hole Group and We Escape are doing the Massachusetts Resilient Coast Plan, where Allison's our client and we're working closely with her. So there's a lot of overlap. Yeah.
Oh, good. I'll just drop some names today.
Yeah. So yeah, all good. She's wonderful. We worked with her at the city of Boston and she's been such a great addition to CZM. So
Super helpful.
Yeah.
For me last month, so.
okay, great.
Well, if nothing else is coming up, I would like to, motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Alan, you good?
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you all.
everyone. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, team. See you later. Bye.
Now.
Your first meeting.
Now,
Aye.
now sign up for town committee and chair.
Right, exactly.
We've done it.
I'm not great at doing things like following Robert's rules, but I can certainly.
Let me
do
stop
it.
the recording before you say all the
Right,
truth.
Great. Well, it's not very.
The chair has a fair amount of